On June 5th, Scott Walker managed to hold on to the governorship of Wisconsin. Facing a recall election, he raised an unprecedented $45 million, mostly from out of state, outspending the rival Democrat Tom Barrett by at least 5 to 1.
Walker did what he was elected to do. Walker made the tough decisions to fix Wisconsin's budget, get our economy moving, and put taxpayers back in charge. Today, Wisconsin is adding jobs.
Walker had been narrowly elected in 2010. After 6 weeks in office, he proposed Bill SB 11 that would effectively end collective bargaining rights and cut wages for unionized public employees. Wisconsin, the birthplace of collective bargaining rights, became ground zero for the battle of union and labor rights in the United States. Filmmaker Amy Williams documented the historic citizen uprising against Governor Walker's bill. The Real News Network caught up with the director and cast members at the world premiere of We Are Wisconsin at the Hot Docs Film Festival in Toronto.
Please welcome back the director, Amy Williams.
I think before we take a question, I'd love each one of you to talk really briefly about how participating in this event, this historic event, and the film changed you.
Prior to this, I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. Husband's a police officer, kind of a very insular life that I didn't realize was insular until this happened. And then I realized that with the stroke of a pen, all of our rights can be wiped away, and that we are up against a tremendous amount of money and power and influence. But guess what? People, our voice, our collaborative voice, will always win. And I learned that, and I will never forget it, and I'm teaching my kids that.
The great thing about what happened in Wisconsin is that ordinary, everyday people found their voice. It was like a spark to get this guy out of office. And everybody got up in the morning and went down to the Capitol to kind of touch base with their community and find out what's next, what's the amendments, what's happening. And people started participating in democracy. And that for me was like a beautiful story to tell.
Madison police officer Brian Austin was one of the main characters featured in the film.
We took a full-page ad out in the paper, our union, in support of workers' rights.
Your union was not actually under attack, was not included in the bill. Could you speak to that?
We realized actually the first day the bill was announced, we started reading summaries of it, that we were going to be exempt, but all the police, or most of the police unions and fire unions in the state were exempt from the legislation, meaning we were going to retain our collective bargaining rights. And we can argue, we can speculate as to what the reasons were. I believe that the governor was, number one, trying to divide labor, and that was a very clear line to divide groups on. I think they were also expecting us to fall in line. I think that he probably expected some civil unrest, and he wanted us there to clean up his mess for him. And I think we behaved in a way that really surprised him. I mean, I talked to somebody close to his administration and said he was furious with our response. He just expected us to act like the good soldiers and thank him for our exemption and sit it out. So we came out, and we came out very publicly and very loud and very forcefully, and I think we had a huge impact on this debate, even though our numbers are small. People really, especially the kind of middle-of-the-road people, really listen to what police officers and firefighters have to say. It's hard to discount us as crackpots or anarchists or, fringe people. When the cops and the firefighters are protesting, there's a problem. So I'm proud of the role we played in that. Many on-duty officers who probably didn't support what we were doing, but they did protect people's rights to exercise their free speech and their right to be heard without violence, without fear of retribution. And we really set the model for the world, I think, in terms of making that happen. So it's going to be critical going forward, because I think if the police can build a relationship with protesters and we can start kind of a progressive movement policing, that's going to turn the whole conversation on its head.
How was that for you, participating in the film and then going home and being there and then seeing how you know, the media was reporting it.
It was absolutely the most frustrating thing, because I think on an intellectual level, we all knew we don't believe everything we read, we don't believe everything we see, but to see it, to have it happening to us, I don't even know if I have the vocabulary to describe how brokenhearted I was after going downtown, protesting with these people who were, you know, in their 60s and 70s, and our neighbors. I saw my kids' teachers, I saw police officers, there were UAW people there, and to go home and hear the newscasters completely turn it around. My family believed what they saw on the news.
Yeah.
They absolutely believed that what was happening on the news was the real story, because Fox News doesn't lie, and that we were atrocious parents for bringing our children to that awful, violent situation. You know, and it's really sad to me, because my own father chose to believe, instead of listening to my story, he chose my father would rather hear about my family and my children and what we went through. Some corporate newscaster, instead of calling his daughter and asking her what was going on and asking her if we were okay, because we were not okay. The boot of oppression was on our hearts for days and weeks and months, and it was awful, and I just needed my dad to say, "Are you okay?" And he refused to talk to us. They're still not talking to us. And because that is how powerful these people in corporate media are, and that is their goal, I guess, to just break up families.
The thing I realize is fear and hate are very, very powerful motivators. And I think the right wing in our country has done a masterful job at harnessing that fear.
Scott Walker's campaign spending is the highest in U.S. history for a state election.
In my opinion, Tuesday was kind of a referendum on what's happening in this country as far as our campaign finance and the influence of money in our political system. And I think Tuesday was proof that it is utterly run amok. So they raised tens of millions of dollars and completely carpet bombed our airwaves, both TV and radio, with ads. You know, we all know in the labor movement how important labor unions have been, not just for members of those unions, but for workers that, you know, as a whole in society. And it's continued to be borne out. States without significant labor presence have, a significantly lower standard of living for their workers. But this governor and his allies completely demonized organized labor. And, you know, to show how bad it was, a significant portion, over 30% of union members voted for Scott Walker in the primary, or in the recall election. And that's not a really telling testament to their messaging, you know, to get people to vote directly against their best interests. I don't know what is.
The election to recall, not a total loss, managed to flip the Senate from a GOP majority.
I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that right-to-work legislation was coming, that essentially busts both public and private unions. 23 of our states here have right-to-work legislation, and right-to-work states, you know, the workers earn a significant percentage less compared to unionized states. So we were very concerned about that. And, you know, on top of that, there was rumors that we would see a personhood amendment, you know, a really stringent anti-abortion type legislation to coming through, and a whole host of other, you know, really things the far right wanted to push through.
The war wages on for those who campaigned against Walker.
If I've learned anything from making this film is Wisconsinites don't give up. There'll be other things that a movement has been started. These people are not going to stop.
You know, the nice thing about having a movement that has so many new activists in it, like me, you know, 16 months of political activism is in infancy. And the benefit of that kind of movement is you have a lot of people who have a lot of energy left and a lot of ideas and a lot of creativity. So we're very energized to keep fighting here.
After June 5th, we're going to take the film on the road, and we're going to try to take it into every community in our country to, you know, inspire people to take a more active participatory role in their democracy.
And this is a global thing. This isn't just Wisconsin. This is something we hope that you all will take with you wherever you go, and remember that the power is with the people, and I will never take it for granted again, and my children will be raised knowing that their voices matter and that they can be powerful too.
Initially there's this letdown and, is the film relevant? And actually I think the film is even more relevant now, and I think it's even more imperative that people see this film, because people could take the message out of what happened on Tuesday that, no matter what you do, you can't beat money. And I think we showed very hopeful signs in that film that people have to organize and have to get together and, sometimes get in the streets. And we may have lost the battle on Tuesday, but there's a lot more that can happen here, and I think will happen. So, we want people to stay engaged and stay connected. And, what's happening here is relevant to what's happening in Canada, is relevant to what's happening in Europe, in Asia, and all over the globe.
My daddy was a miner, now he's in the air and sun. He'll be with you, fellow workers.
This is Kathleen Maitland-Carter reporting for the Real News Network.